Okay, well, welcome everyone. I am not Herr Langer, so I'm not Professor Langer, as you can tell, but he will be here slightly later, so it is my duty and my pleasure today to introduce our speaker. I'm very pleased to see a few of you here from my manuscript classes because today we'll be having some really interesting conversations about manuscript digitization, manuscript metadata, and generally how one handles the manuscript data that we are now working with in the digital sphere. Our speaker, Torsten Schaßan, is a colleague. He is working at the Bibliothek in Wolfenbüttel, where he is in charge of digital projects as well as digitization. He's a specialist in digital humanities, in digital editions, metadata formats, text encoding, and manuscript data structures. So we're very lucky to have him here today. He's a real expert in this entire field, of which there are not very many. He has worked on many different projects. Some of you may have heard some of them, the Europeana Regia, e-Codices. Those of you who've been in my classes should definitely know that one. And Codices Electroni Ecclesiae Coloniensis, so the Cologne church manuscripts. In addition to many publications, he has done a lot of conferences and a lot of work generally on this field for about, I think, not exaggeration to say 30 years, maybe?
My first contact with the TI was like 94, 5, something like that.
Yeah. So, and he's going to be talking to us today about the cataloging of manuscripts and prints and their ecosystems. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for having me and thank you for the introduction. I will be talking about manuscripts and prints and how they are related in some concerns, and I enlarged the topic and the title of the talk a little bit from only cataloging of manuscripts and prints to manuscripts and prints in general, because I wanted to talk a little bit about digitization and how the two things relate together as well. First, I want to give you a short overview about what's going to happen in the next 50 minutes, and I would be very lucky to receive a sign like 5 minutes, 3, 1 or something. First of all, I want to talk a little bit about my motivation, why I am concerned with this topic at all in the moment. So this invitation came like just in time because I was thinking about something. I show you as an example about the whole thing what I want to talk about, and see then how prints behave in the realm of manuscripts and vice versa, how they do in the other field. Think about a little bit how manuscripts and prints are dealt with in concept reference models, and then have a look out at digital representation itself. So, my motivation. When I began to design the data structures for the Handschriftenportal, we agreed upon a core set of data fields, which we want to populate for as many objects as possible. Among these, we thought about a topology of forms in which cultural objects came unto us. So you see the information fields here in a short overview, some dealing with the identification of the object itself, some about the materiality, some about the origin, and then the content. And I will very much concentrate in this talk about the form the objects are classified to. And for all these fields, we create authority data or controlled vocabulary. You see here in the screenshot the example of the form attribute values that we offer to facet the browsing in the Handschriftenportal. So among these, there are codices, fragments, collections, Sammelband, single sheets, and so on. And this is based on a controlled vocabulary, which is introduced in the data that we have about the manuscripts themselves. Information that we keep in these fields, and the information is derived from the descriptions we have about the manuscripts, are attached to the so-called cultural object document, which is the core center of the Handschriftenportal, because we're dealing with two different kinds of information in the Handschriftenportal. First of all, we want to represent the manuscript, the fragment, the binding, whatever the cultural object is that we want to describe or represent by digital means in the Handschriftenportal. And so, first of all, we need this cultural object document to represent the manuscript. And then we have descriptions. Descriptions are entities of their own. They are published. They have an established text, and so they won't change anymore. So we want to present descriptions as well in the Handschriftenportal and only connect between the two types. So descriptions are attached to manuscripts, related to manuscripts, as are digital facsimile, and so on. And these 15 fields I've listed here, the information is derived from the manuscripts and then attached in a way to the cultural object itself. This was one thing, and we were thinking about a value list of which forms a manuscript could take, or which forms an object could take that we want to represent in the Handschriftenportal. And as you can see, there are some among them that are dealing with pure manuscript stuff, which are codex, single sheet, composite, fragment, scroll, leporello, and so are forms that are purely manuscript, and there are forms that are mixed in a way. So we have the collection, for example, we have the Sammelband, we have print with manuscript parts, we have the host volume. All these are mixed forms in the sense that there are manuscript and other forms of text or text carriers inside, mainly print. And that's why I was interested in that, because it was obvious from the beginning that the major number of objects would contain both manuscript and print information, as, for example, fragments often are bound into the binding of print volumes. But we agreed upon that we want to focus on the manuscript so that the print does not overflow or flood our database. We wanted to see the manuscript information first, and information about host volume or a Sammelband or so should step back behind that, because the information about printed volumes would outnumber the manuscripts themselves, the pure manuscript forms, if we had them in the first row, let's say. So I wanted to examine further how especially these forms of the Sammelband and with a side light on the print with manuscript parts are dealt with, because we have here this realm of where print are in manuscript realm and the other way around. The second motivation was that we are about to introduce IIIF in the Herzog August Bibliothek. We have to republish all of our digital facsimile. It's a bit the ghost of the early born or early attempts, because we're digitizing since 1998. So we were one of the first libraries in Germany digitizing manuscripts, putting them online, and so there was no agreed way of publishing these digital images, and so we had to invent our own viewer for that, and it's more or less still the same than it was from the beginning, so it's a little bit outdated. The whole appearance of it is not too nice, especially as we have like really huge images in our digital stocks, which we deliver in a not too user-friendly way right now. So IIIF would be really, really important to have, but we have to do a lot of preparation to republish these. And in order to do so, I examined each and every digital facsimile we had, which is about 2,000 something right now, if you have a look at our manuscript database. And so I looked at all the digital facsimile in order to find problems, identify mistakes that have probably been overlooked or not dealt with in the past, but I wanted to correct all these things. And yeah, so I looked at all the digital facsimile, and I found quite interesting stuff on the way. And that's where my example comes into the view. One item I came across is one volume from the Augustine collection, which is the collection of the person who gave the name to us, or which name the library carries today. And this volume confronted me with all the problems I want to mention today, or which I want to dig into. And first of all, it posed me with all the problems of how to deal with such an object, which does neither belong entirely into the realm of prints nor into the realm of manuscripts, and what we can do about it. The volume has been dealt with, for example, in the Einbanddatenbank. So we took copies, let's say, of the stamps and all the decoration of the cover. You see probably here these forms that are represented there, and you can see that this volume and this tool has been used around 1583 to 1509. So this is more or less exactly the time of when the prints were produced, because all of the prints inside are incunabula, so they were printed before 1500. And so this is a historical binding of the time when this volume was produced. And well, here we have different views about that. We have here, for example, the first printed text, which has been heavily annotated by somebody. In some concerns, we would consider this both a manuscript and a print, because there are so large handwritten parts in it that we would deal with such an object as if it was a manuscript. But there are manuscript parts anyway, so there are some stretches of text. This is an example of the first page of a entirely handwritten text, but it appears as if it was printed on one hand and it was heavily annotated too. So there are two manuscripts or two texts there anyway. And next to it, the short overview about what the manuscript or this volume is all about. This is a catalog done by the former head librarian Otto von Heinemann, but the catalog is dated back to 1903. That was when this catalog was published. Actually, it does not reflect current cataloging standards, but it sheds some interesting lights on the subject. So if you can read it Heinemann claims that the volume starts with 2 handwritten texts, numbered 1 and 2. Then follows a print, this one here on the left. Then another handwritten text as number 4, that's this one here, then another print, and then 2 more handwritten texts here numbered 6 and 7. His cataloging approach was that he was mainly interested in the manuscript parts, thus he counted only the manuscript pages, saying that this volume contains 131 leaves of manuscript text, which in fact is funny because he didn't count the prints, and he left out another print which is bound into the volume right after number 7. So there is another print, but he is not interested in prints at all. So it's just by chance that he lists the 2 in between the manuscript parts for clarity probably, and he left out one other thing. So it's hard to get an idea about what the volume looks like in reality if you read this description, because he leaves out so much information. He doesn't give us numbers of leaves for the prints, he leaves out prints, etc. He doesn't say that this text folio, which starts on folio 88 verso, is written or starts on the last page of the print before. So this folio 88 verso is in fact the last folio of the print before, and he started counting then again. So it's like funny because this folio exists only as a verso folio and there's no recto to it. So it's funny. Yeah. What would have been nice, and which is nice for digitization as well, is such a representation of the objects. So in the past, we have digitized manuscripts mainly from cover to cover because it's easy to do. You just lay under the camera, you flip the pages and photograph all of it. To do the edges and spine as well is a completely different setup which is needed, so much more effort to do so. But it gives us a lot of information additionally to if you just look at the manuscript or at the volume in the 90 degrees angle on the flat page. So according to my above mentioned or first mentioned nomenclature about the forms of the objects, this one would definitely be a Sammelband because it contains prints and manuscript parts. But as you have seen here, some of these texts, both manuscript and printed, are so heavily annotated that in other contexts, if this text would appear alone, we would call it a print with manuscript parts. So in a sense, it falls under these 2 categories. But now let's have a look at how this very volume has been treated in the both realms. How have we dealt with it in the manuscript realm, and how we dealt with it in the print realm. First, the realm of manuscripts. In our nowadays cataloging rules, the prints inside of the volume should at least be mentioned. Heinemann had done a bit of it, but not all. Today we would catalog all of the prints to get an idea about what the whole volume looks like. But reflecting the underlying structures of how we store this information in our cataloging systems, we store all the information in TI XML, as well in our local database and meanwhile in the Handschriftenportal. But the TI allows to describe the object itself in great detail and allows to represent the object and its text in various ways. But on a bibliographical level, the TI is not well adjusted to represent prints as well, because prints are dealt with in another way. I will come to that later. And the TI does not have the structures to do so. So TI is good for manuscript descriptions and not so good for print or for describing printed texts. Technically, it is possible to enhance the TI description with the references to the bibliographic information. So to encode this Heinemann description and just say, we have a print here, give the name of the author, the title, the date and place of publishing, and then link to an online catalog or link to a digital representation. All that is possible, but it does help only a little further. For me, it is important, as I mentioned before, that the description itself shall not be changed in any way. So we should not interfere with the text of the Heinemann description and describe the prints further than what he has done, but just add something to it on the, let's say, metadata level to say, like, you could enhance the entry with the link to a database, but the document shouldn't be changed itself. So the information should sit somewhere else instead. And what's important as well to recognize is that the value we put on the text of the description, although it is historical and probably outdated information, you will not find this way of dealing with information in other systems. So, for example, in the online catalogs for prints, any information could change at any time. You wouldn't recognize, you will not get any information about that an entry had been changed at all, but you will just face the actual possible, hopefully best information. But it seems as if cataloging of prints seem to be more accustomed to tell the truth, as if this one entry is telling the truth about the object, about the text, whereas in the realm of manuscripts, we know that there's almost no bit of information that is true tomorrow. Yeah, the only thing that stays as it is probably the material. So because you wouldn't change the manuscript from parchment to paper, this is not possible. So this should stay, but everything else, the amount of leaves, the size of the leaves, the text inside, how large it is, the binding, whatever, all that could change. And even the history of the manuscripts could change as a bit of information, because we could learn now that a manuscript which we thought was written in the 15th century could be written in the 14th century or in the 16th or whatever. So this bit of information could change at any time because of scientific progress. We know more about manuscripts, we learn more about it, we learn to identify scripts, we learn more about text and so on. So whatever is in the description is a historical fact, in a sense that somebody stated something at a certain point of time, but it can change anytime. So, yeah. Exactly. The TI, as I said, is less useful to represent the information about prints, because we have this whole idea of levels which are attached to the text. I will come to that very short. And the TI offers something to describe something that is divided into parts. Like the element in respect is called MS part for manuscript parts, but this term is, and this element is reserved very much for manuscript produced, so manuscript parts, saying that the part should be a manuscript itself. So if you think back to the description of Heinemann, you would identify at least 3, probably 5 different manuscript parts, because each text could have been written by its own hand, written down in another setting with its own history, and only collected together in order to be bound into this volume, might be. As I said, the TI element, MS Part, is meant only for manuscript booklets and for not to be used for prints, for example, and not to be used for bindings. I had this discussion in the TI community a short while ago, whether we could use MS Part for description of bindings. Huge uproar saying, no, that's a completely different description, theory, and practice. We do not want that. I said, okay. And so this shouldn't be used for prints either. The Music Encoding Initiative, on the other hand, allows for a better description of prints in their realm. So the TI adopts something we call short VIMI, and that's defined in the functional requirements for bibliographical records. And I wonder if you have heard about the VIMI hierarchy before. If so, nice. If not, then today is the day. So we distinguish 4 different levels which a text could address. So first of all, there's the work, the idea of something. So somebody has written something, or somebody has thought about something, which is the work, which is an intellectual or artistic creation. So Augustinus de Civitate Dei is a work which Augustine has written down or thought about it, and so it's the idea of the work which is one of these levels. But this level, this work realizes itself in something we call an expression. The expression is something more concrete, so there might be the text might exist in Latin, and it might exist in Italian, and it might exist in other languages. So this would be an expression we want to distinguish from the very idea that a work exists in the world. But these expressions are embodied in manifestations. So there are books that contain these texts, and we want to speak about the books themselves as well. But these could be like something like the first edition or the second edition or something like that. So this is a physical approach to the work, and then there are the items of that work. So there might be hundreds of copies of the second edition of a work of Augustine de Civitate Dei, published in whatever, Cambridge. But the book in the shelf, this is the item itself. And it's important to recognize that prints usually are cataloged on this manifestation level. So if you have a look at the OPAC entries, the online catalog entries, you will first of all find the manifestation level represented. And then you will trace hints of items in these, probably. Whereas a manuscript is both in one thing. So we have an item, first of all, because each manuscript is singular. There's no other copy like this one, but it manifests a text as well. So we call this a manifestation singleton. I will talk about that later. But to know this hierarchy is very important if you're working in a library and if you want to reflect on how textual relations, for example, between manuscripts and print are, and especially important is it if we are talking about these mixed things, manuscript and print. So again, have a look at it. How do behave prints in the realm of print? So in the online catalogs, for example. As I said, the online entries of a printed work address the manifestation, first of all. You have like the second edition of the text, and you will have an entry like that. and the object which contains the text, the item, is really hard to trace. And sometimes you really have to know how to approach the item itself. So I searched for something. I searched here for a signature for a shelf mark in order to find this volume. I wanted to see how is this volume represented with its text in our online catalog, and I had to know two things. First, I had to know how is our shelf mark file represented in the RAM. So I had to normalize in a sense. The shelf mark was 27.6 Poetica. So here all the dots, white space, and so are left out. So it's concatenated, and I had to add an A in the beginning because it belongs to the Augustine collection. You really have to know this. Otherwise, if you don't add the A, you will not find the volume. You will not find the information in our catalog. You have to know to which collection it belongs, add an A at the beginning, and then you end up with something like this, a list of all entries that look more or less like this volume. And then you find 3 entries here saying 27.6 Poet 2, 4, and 6. These are the prints in the volume. So recognized by our catalog. Important to recognize is here that the normalization of the shelf mark is another problem, because this volume carries number 27.6 Poet. The normalization of the shelf mark would be the same for number 276 Poet. It would end up in the same entries in a sense, which is a funny thing, but well, that's how our catalogs work here. If I click on the first entry of those, you will first get another list with 2 entries. One addresses the manifestation of the text, which is the second one. It's represented by this book sign here. So this would lead you to the object in the shelf, and the other one is represented by something that represents something digital. So this would lead you to the digital copy. And if you click on these 2 things, you will recognize some things. Again, this information up here belongs to the manifestation of this works, giving you the author, title, period, print, place and time when it's printed, etc. And then you will get some, let's say, local information, because this is dealing with the item that is sitting in our shelf. This text might exist in other libraries as well, but this is the information about ours. And here, this is the only trace you have to the item, to the book itself, other than in the manuscript realm. And here, at least you find a classification similar to the one I was talking about, that is a Sammelband mit Inkunabeln. So this is exactly what we would call this piece in the manuscript realm as well. You will find this information only at the first entry. So the other entries for the other 2 texts will not contain this information. That will only be Stück in der Sammelband. So giving you little hints of what in this volume might be, but no possibility to get from one entry to the other. So there's no chance. There's no relation between the entries for the text, because somehow our online catalogs are mainly interested in single texts and not in the objects themselves. If you have a look at the other entry for the digital copy, again here you find this symbol here. You find a little bit of the bibliographical information as well, but not all of the information. Some is missing. At least it says, okay, it's the electronic edition. It gives you the shelf mark as well, but no link to the print entry. So there's no relation between that and at least then linked to the digital copy. How do manuscripts behave in this realm of prints? Because we haven't seen much information about that there is any manuscript at all in this volume. So none of these entries here has something. So how could one know or learn from these catalog entries that there's something like a manuscript in this volume? You have to look hard, and sometimes the information is not available, but you have to get an idea. Sometimes, or more often, you will have to look for terms like Marginalien or handschriftliche Annotationen. Sometimes this is introduced in the catalog entries. Then you will get an idea that there are manuscripts traces in this volume. But as I said before, this information is kept on the local level of the entry. So this will not be searchable in union catalogs. So if you are looking at the GBV, for example, you will not find this information about our copy and that it contains some manuscripts. There are latest trends to raise this information from the local level to the manifestation level, where it does not belong, but only for searchability, people think about to move that bit of information. The problem here is our online catalogs are huge information systems. The cataloging rules develop slowly, and sometimes the amount of work in order to apply new rules to the old mass of information is so heavy that everybody says oh, leave it. We have no time or money or whatever to do so. So these things change slowly. We face the introduction of a whole new cataloging approach called RDA, Resource Description and Access, which should structure information to give you access to all kinds of information of all forms, of all types, and this BIMI hierarchy is thought and woven into this RDR system, but it's not implemented in our catalogs because it would have been too much work to do so, which is a pity. But if you look at some newer examples, you find some entries that have been done like that. So we are going this way slowly. Here, for example, we have one volume which has Druck ist zusammengebunden mit einer Handschrift. So this print is bound together with a manuscript, which is nice. Again, it says Sammelband mit Inkunabeln. It has even more information about the volume itself. It says Ansatzhaken einer Kettenbibliothek. So it tells us a little bit about the physical appearance of the book, saying it had been chained in a former library to the table or the bookshelf or whatever, but we still find only traces of that here. Another exemplar gives you here a hint to the other entry that there exists a digitalized version of it. And here you find am Ende 43 Blätter Handschrift, so bound together with that 43 pages of a manuscript, folio of a manuscript. You recognize this information has been raised up to the manifest level. Here it's still on the local level, so the systems vary very much. How are now systems dealing with manuscript and print in conceptual reference models, so in the typical logical approach? The CIDOC CRM, which has been developed in the realm of museums and art, but nonetheless very interesting ideas in it, defines a property F4, which is called manifestation singleton. And to quote from this definition, these are objects produced as unique objects with no sibling intended in the course of their production. So, manuscripts, for example. The successor of the CRM and the successor of the Ferber, how we call it, the functional requirements for bibliographical records, which I've mentioned before. The library reference model generalizes the thing a little bit. It deprecates the F4, but says you should have both an F4 and F3 entry for the manifestation and an F5 for the item. So saying again, these two levels fall into one in such an object as a manuscript. Problem with that is that the CA-doc-CRN goes on. It should be noted that if all but one copy of a given publication are destroyed, then that copy does not become an instance of F4 manifestation singleton because it was produced together with sibling copies, even though it now happens to be unique. So the sheer idea of how the thing has been produced is taken into consideration, whether something is concerned to be a manifestation singleton or something else. So even if a single print survives, it is not considered to be of that ontological status, let's say. In my opinion, I would say that it applies to every single print in such a volume, because these prints are produced in mass. There are copies, might have survived or not, but this object that we're talking about, this Sammelband, is a singular one. It does not exist anywhere else in the work, and it was not intended to be produced in the same way, because not only is the combination of these prints unique, I would dare say. I haven't checked with all the libraries in the world, but I would dare say that because in times before the 18th century or the mid 17th century probably, prints were distributed as leaf sheets and only bound into volumes by the owner who bought the prints. So each volume that has been bound by the 17th century is a unique object to very, very great extent. There might be exceptions. So if the print, the text is large enough to form an entire volume of itself, then yes, okay, that would be a special case. But in this case, that we have a Sammelband, which contains 3 prints that might not exist in this occurrence, in this grouping together in any other library in the world, and we have manuscript parts in it. It's a single object. So it is indeed produced as a unique object by the owner of that book, but the one who has grouped them together and bound them together. So I wonder, why shouldn't such a Sammelband not be treated as a manifestation singleton? Turning to the digital representation of these objects, first of all, have a look at digitalization policy in Germany, mainly funded by the Deutsche Forschungsgemeinschaft, DFG. And in the rules for digitization, you can read that for every textual work, called Textwerk in Deutsch, only one copy should be digitized. In the past, it was even worse. In the VD17, for example, das Verzeichnis deutscher Drucke des 17. Jahrhunderts, we were forced to digitize only title pages, nothing else. It's not far in the past, but it had been done like this. So for huge cataloging efforts, like the VD17, we were forced to only digitize title pages and give them as additional information to our cataloging systems. In the meantime, as we are evolving in these times of electronic text, with the possibility to turn the image of digitized print into an electronic text by OCR, HTR methods, and so on, even the DFG strives for saying we want one copy of a text digitized in order to produce an electronic text out of this. But still, only one copy of these might be digitized, even if a text is as heavily annotated as my example here, because there's more manuscript than printed text on some of these pages. but still it wouldn't suffice for the DFG in general. In practice, manuscripts are digitalized in its entirety from cover to cover, preferably with spines and edges, as I've said before, in order to give you the full impression of what the volume looks like. To be fair, we'd say if such a volume contains more printed pages than manuscript pages, we probably could afford to digitize the whole volume in one go as well, because our photo studio has a workload and we have projects to fulfill, and so probably if we wanted to, we couldn't afford it anyway, but that would be ideal to represent these objects as a whole. And as you have seen before, the digitalization of prints is covering only the manifest level. Again, as one copy of each textual work should be digitized, it is the manifestation level, not the item level. So by chance, you could end up with a digital copy of our manuscript, which has manuscript editions, but the same text with other manuscript editions, annotations, whatever usage traces, wouldn't be digitized in another library. So we in the development of the Handschriftenportal, we thought about what would we probably know about digital facsimile of the objects that we deal with. And we came up with the idea that we want to know about 4 types of information. We want to know about how has a digital copy been produced, so what's on the image. What can you see on the image? Is it a single page digitization where each page is dedicated to its own image, or has the opening been digitized? So just so that you can see both sides in one image, or maybe are there details, so not an entire page on the image. That's one thing. Then we would want to know how complete is the digital copy. Completeness can be thought in more than one way, we figured out, because when is the object represented in a complete way? Is it enough to digitize the book block, which has been done before, or is it the book block plus covers, which has been done afterwards in order to get an idea, or is it only if you have book block covers and edges and spine that you have like the 3D idea of the object? The same applies to something we will call a partial digitization. Partial, we want to divide into if you have like a set of coherent pages, so saying like the first text of a manuscript has been digitized, but the rest of the manuscript has been too large, it was too expensive and it's not digitized, or are there only example pages, because we have lots of manuscripts where we get the requests for images of every time the same 3 images, the same 3 pages, because they are so famous in terms of like art history or whatever. So maybe there are only example pages digitized. Then we want to know about how the imaging has been done. Has it been in a standard way? It was color, or has it been a grayscale digitization, or thermography, or spectral imaging, or whatever, so that you get an idea about what is on the image. And last but not least, from where have the images been taken? Have they been taken from the original, so from the object itself, or from some kind of reproduction? So from our Evangeliar Heinrich des Löwen, which is too precious to be digitized at all, we have taken images from the facsimile we have. but it's still a digitalization of a reproduction of the original thing. And for all these things, we developed a controlled vocabulary again in the Handschriftenportal, which is not yet settled, but it will be published when we have done so. We are developing several controlled vocabularies and thesauri in the course of the Handschriftenportal. There will be more to come. And as I said, we needed to republish all our digital facsimile because of the age of the presentation that we had. And we want to republish them as IIIF. Right now we are only delivering static JPEG files, which might mean that they are very huge, and if you have to open them in your mobile phone or whatever, it might crash your phone. Well, no possibilities to zoom into the image or other image manipulation, for example, turning the page if some script is like on the other way around or something. This is not possible with our old presentation, so we want to republish it. And what we've done is to organize the images in a new way as well, according to this metadata information that we have about the digitization, saying that, I've given you an example here. In general, we are grouping our digital copies in different levels. First of all, we have the material itself. So manuscripts are grouped together, prints are grouped together, incunabula are grouped together, digital editions, and so on. Whatever is in our digital library is first of all grouped by the material. Then you would find everything related to this volume, 27.6 Poet, in one file, one folder, let's say. And then we introduced another level saying if we have different digitization approaches, that probably we have double digitization done in different years because of the poor quality of the first copy or whatever, then it could have happened that we digitized an object twice. Then we would group them by year and the approach of standard digitization from the original in order to distinguish it from a digitization either in 2024 or to distinguish it from a digitization taken from microfilm, or to distinguish the spectral imaging that we probably have about this object. So there's some grouping of the things, and we want to reorganize all our images by that, using the possibilities of IIIF as well, because IIIF allows us to represent more than one sequence of images in a row, saying that you could scroll through the images of a standard digitization or of all watermarks that we have for this volume and so on, so that the succession is one thing that we could group and publish the images by. But if you are on one image, let's say on one canvas, you could say like, now I want to see not the standard digitization, but I want to see the watermark image of this thing, or want to see a detail of this image or whatever. Gives you another possibility. And last but not least, IIIF allows for a virtual reconstruction, saying we could virtually rebind things. In one of the entries, you might have recognized, I'm not sure, but in one of these prints that have been bound into this volume, it says like, when this volume was produced, two leaves were like bound in the wrong way or in another way than they should have belonged to. So, but virtually we could like regroup and reorder the images, and we can bind the digital copies of the prints together with the digital copies of the manuscript and reconstruct really the volume and let the browser scroll through and navigate through the whole volume, and not to have enter the manuscript database in order to see the manuscript pages, and then go to the online catalog and go to this entry and even find it, as I said, and navigate like under great difficulties from one piece to the other. I leave that one out. To conclude, what's the desired future representation of cultural objects? First of all, as I mentioned, I would very like to see these mixed objects that contain print and manuscripts to be dealt with in a similar way. So both should be treated as historical objects that they are, because especially the prints are not dealt with that in a coherent and detailed way. So I would say that first steps in this direction should be like emphasize that it's important to know about the object as a whole and to treat it as a whole and as a historical thing that it is, in a sense. Especially this form of a Sammelband is very interesting in terms of to understand how texts have been transmitted over time, how they have been recognized in the 15th, 16th, 17th century when they were grouped together, bound together, heavily annotated, and so on. It tells us something about both the objects, but probably even more about the texts, how they've been read, etc. And the appreciation of that has to be met not only in the cataloging of the objects, especially in print, as I said, but as well in digitalization and in scholarly editing practices. And thus the realms of manuscript and prints should be brought somewhat closer, both following more or less the same approach, but as well as linking between these two realms more than it has been done in the past. And last but not least, I think that IIIF can be used to present such distributed information, distributed items well, because we can regroup these things and we have more influence about the presentation in IIIF, for example, than we have to change such huge projects, efforts, databases like a union catalog. That's a too heavy workload. So such an approach is the easier way, which is closer to us. That's it.
Thank you so much for that. I think that it's been a masterclass in showing us that digitization does not necessarily immediately mean that we have access to the objects themselves. And it shows the enormous amount of work that goes into presenting these objects for us to use, to reuse, and also, of course, the importance of IIIF and the significance of it. I sometimes struggle explaining to my students why IIIF is so exciting, because it's just a presentation standard of images, isn't it? They don't get excited about it. But this, I think, really shows why it is exciting.
And we should discuss it.
I'm against IIIF, to be honest. But if you come from the image part, it's a poor tool. But yes, incorporating text or coming from the text part and incorporating images in a structure that is laid out from a textual appearance is quite useful, of course. But from the view of image science, you can't do many things with this. But it's a specialized discussion. But yes, since I'm just asked to tell something, we are always very happy if someone comes who says books are material objects. And we're happy to see, me, myself especially, that a library like yours, who has with this large collection of artists' books, a collection that can't be dealt in a different way than looking at the whole object, now undertakes lots of efforts to bring those things more into the digitization pipeline. So we're really happy that you do this now. But I'm asking myself if this is the end of digitizing materiality, or do you take into account, let's say, the touchable surface of the book, which can be quite interesting to see, especially with old manuscripts, but also with your artist's collection. Do you take into account how it is bound? So especially don't know how many Klebealben you have, but in art history, it becomes now very fashionable to document those separately added prints to one volume, which nearly every collector did it in a different way. And they not only find, let's say, the way of bounding, but also the way of cutting the pieces in a different way. So some collectors were more interested in keeping a certain area left. Others put it neatly on the plate, and things like that. And the same is true if you look for how deep it was printed, so which quality of print you have there, so from this perspective, and I know that it's not a typical library perspective, but a perspective from someone who is interested more into the materiality, I'm asking myself if you make an exception with these special volumes in document and go into a deeper annotation, or is this a state of art where you say, okay, we'll do more than we did before, especially the Sammelbände, and we're happy to do this so far?
Okay, the problem with digitalization in general and in modern times is we could do more, then we want to do more, and even more and even more and even more. So the latest approaches are to examine the DNA of the parchment in order to locate the sheep herd and date it somehow, so to relate like the production place and some dating to some DNA information that parchment still would hold. Or in a project in Leipzig has dealt with microorganisms in manuscripts and had searched for traces of microorganisms and chemical substances in the manuscripts in order to learn about the history as well and so on. We can do some of these things. I don't think that they will be applied very general. I mean, we are going deeper at some aspects that do something. In manuscript cataloging, for example, we pay much attention to the formation of the object. So the collation formula, for example, is extracted explicitly in our cataloging projects. We have a specialized colleague, a librarian, working only on that, helping the cataloger who is dealing with the manuscript history and the textual history. And so on a scientific level, we have somebody who is just counting pages and trying to trace how the collation of the manuscript has been done. We usually express this as a row of like numbers and times, saying like, okay, we have a bifolium, or we have 10 bifolia here, and we have some other groupings in the manuscript. Some go even further and want to represent it visually. In America, there has been a tool developed by Bob Porter, a visual collation editor, where you could say like, okay, this leaf is going around the whole booklet, and but from this leaf we only have the left part, and the right part, the right part has been cut off, and so that you can really go into every single leaf and say like, how has it grouped together with other things. This is a whole lot of effort if you want to do it by hand, and we've done that for very exceptional cases. We have bought a Stammbuch of Heinhofer, which was a very important correspondent and book buyer agent of Herzog August. We have bought his Stammbuch 3 years ago for 1.2 million euros. This has been subject to its own research project, and there we did such a collation formula representation, but well, it's overwhelming. We can't afford to do that for more objects. So I would say yes and no. There can be done so much. I mean, if we have a similar level for all the objects, it might be more helpful than to have all the information for only a few numbers. So we strive to advance in a broad approach for all the manuscripts, saying, for example, to classify the form of object right is something you have to do afterwards. So I have to deal with that now. So going back to the old catalogs from Heinemann from the 19th century, it's a hard work to do to identify what kind of object do we have here. Is it a Sammelband? Is it a pure manuscript, or what is it? So,
just to add to that, I think libraries have 3 different levels of manuscript presentation, where they have the digital facsimile, the schematic representation that you were just talking about, and the physical description, or the description of the catalog description. And I think both the schematic representation and the catalog are used to supplement the image, but the image is at the moment, the standards for the image tend to be around 300 dpi, I think, if that's right.
Yes, 100 dpi, and if it's illuminated also, we strive for 600,
okay,
but
yeah,
well,
yeah.
we've done that.
And I know that it's kind of gotten larger and larger over the last 20 years as well, that DPI has increased itself. But I think this is a question as to what is a facsimile, and to what extent should a facsimile represent the real physical object. And you can go into so much depth. We have the capacity now to really zoom into the page and to see the grain of the page. Do we want that? I think we want that too, but there is only so many resources that we have to represent that. So it's difficult from the point of view of an institution.
And just to add one thing, because I learned about a project of not really burnt, but there was manuscripts from Herculaneum, which have been survived by chance when the Vesuve erupted, and now they have blocks of coal, let's say, which is like manuscripts rolls, and now they are starting to extract with digital means, with later technology, whatever, the surfaces, and try to detect script on it. Although the roll is rolled and very much to get it so. It's carbonized or whatever, but now we have the technologies to dig into that without having to unroll the thing, because it can't be done, because it would destroy everything, but by lesser technology. So you can go into the object picometer by picometer and see whether there are traces of ink or whatever. So they are about to transcribe these manuscripts, pieces of coal, let's say, but they have dealt with 4 rolls in 3 years right now, and they have 120 rolls or something. So it's yeah. Well. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you very much for the talk. It was really interesting. And I was asking myself if you have all these images, if someone tried with computer vision methods or something like that to classify them, and you could to add kind of these relations that you were talking about that do not exist. Did somebody tried that? Because you could find maybe similarities and then use these relations to add them to, have some conversation.
Yeah, the imaging technology is advanced very much over the last 20 years. Things like HDR and so on are far more developed than it had been in the past. Although I have to say that we have to see how to apply these things anyway. So there have been projects that should find out about the organizing of the page, for example. So that an automated layout reconstruction saying, tell me whether there are 2 columns on the page or 1 or 3 or whatever. So this kind of automated layout detection is possible. I wonder whether we should do this automated on all our digital copies. Usually the description would say so, that there is 1, 2, 3 columns. It's not too hard to detect. So the problem is at how far will us bring this question or answers to these questions as well. Everybody is interested in the text, to come to this level again, but HTR is better for the text we are less interested in, let's say. No, because 9th century manuscripts are easily transcribed with HTR because the script is so regular and every machine can read it as every person could read it easily with a bit of training. But the texts are so well known. Every 9th century text has been edited throughout, like, I mean, the relation between the two, the easy to read scripts are less interesting in terms of, for example, textual transmission or whatever. And the harder it's to read, the more interesting the text probably would be. So it's always the question of if we have that one model that reads every handwriting, it has not been invented yet. Well, probably it's possible, but we don't have the capacity, both in power, also technical power and in manpower to do these things, because you usually have to train the machines in order to learn something about the script and to do the HDR. You have to monitor the results very closely and so on. So we don't see that much gain to just put all our images we have into one machine, let it compute something, and then what? Well,
yeah. This is everything from a very textual perspective. And what I was more thinking about, like finding key features, like initials or something like that, coloration, or, not necessarily reading the things, but maybe to have people suggest that use that catalog, to have them have some form of suggestion system where they can find things that look similar, because it would also be quite interesting without even going to this textual level, I would say.
What we have done in the past was an experiment when colleagues from the Technical University in Braunschweig approached us. They had a project about HTR of Arabic scripts. And they wanted to test their system with other types of scripts. So they came to us and said, like, do you have any manuscripts that we could treat with our algorithm and see whether our algorithm can read your script? So we said, okay, exactly this problem of the easiest to read scripts are texts that are not that interesting. So we turned around the question and trained the algorithm to recognize the script. So what are the attributes of the script, of the scribe, let's say. So we trained this algorithm with one manuscript where we knew which scribe was writing the manuscript. And then we fed the same algorithm another manuscript where we knew that only part of the manuscript was written by the same scribe. And we wanted the algorithm to detect the pages where the same scribe is writing, because he knew the script. The algorithm knew the script, he has identified that before, and we wanted to see whether he could find the pages where the same script is writing. That worked. So the machine learned the attributes so well that we could really find the the pages where the same script was writing. I mean, we knew it in advance, so it was just to test it before. But the results where we said like, okay, these pages are very similar to what I have learned before, and these pages are somewhat different, said exactly how many scribes were at work and where the pages were where the same scribe as in the other manuscript was writing. But we wouldn't fed this this algorithm like now all the other manuscripts in order to find any page where the same scribe would have written as well. That it would be there's no option to do something like this. So these things are possible today, but the wide application of something like this is well, it's a problem. We probably with lots of metadata that we have to acquire with about the dating and the localization, etc. We could like probably have like subsets of images and say like, okay, we feed the same algorithm these manuscripts because we are sure that they have been written at the same period, at the same area, and then we could see whether the same scribe is writing something. But well, that's would be hard to do because we need lots of extra information about the manuscripts in advance to do such a selection. I wonder if all my technical terms like the REMI and so on are well known enough, or are there any like questions concerning the understanding of something I have been talking about from the back of the audience? Or do you have any other questions? Yeah.
Thank you for the talk. It was very interesting. I have a question, not technically, but it's about the concept you use. Within EMI, this framework, does it have any restrictions on cardinalities between them? Because the premise of this hierarchy is that you have one work and have multiple expressions, and one expression can have multiple manuscripts, manifestations.
Yeah, manifestations.
So it's not a linear hierarchy, it's a tree. And from what you now presented to us as a distributed pattern, you showed that for wasteland modeling, the WEMI modeling is suitable. It's actually the tree should be the other way around. You know, you have one item that can have multiple expressions of multiple manifests of expression, which is expression of the word. So the hierarchy should be the other way around. And if you can hold this with cardinalities, that you have one to n cardinality in the other direction and is given from the hierarchy, you could easily extract this from a relational database as well. Implementation-wise, you could maybe not use the manifestation within implementing this. It's just a matter of cardinality between the levels of the hierarchy.
The problem is that we have information about the higher levels beforehand. So we have already an idea about all the works that Augustinus and Cicero and whoever have been written, and we are facing or approaching the manuscripts and the printed works with this idea in mind, that there is this work, and especially in manuscript cataloging, it's always the problem of, is this text that we have here really a copy of that work, or is it an extract, or is it a whatever, has somebody some reusing bits of the text, so are these quotations, or how is exactly the relation between what we have as the work idea in mind, how does this relate to what is exactly on the page? So in manuscript description, we usually have to go both ways. We read a text and we think, okay, it might be the work of somebody. Sometimes it's only somebody who says he has the name, but it's a pseudo, or he's taking a false name or whatever. So it's not always the truth we are seeing there, which meant everything about a manuscript could be change tomorrow, because we could learn something about even the authors of texts and say, like, okay, I recognize that the author, he claims to be some Augustine, but now we can identify the real person in some ways. So we have this information about work and expressions and manifestations in our cataloging systems. And as I said, the item itself is not well traceable there. So any approach of reversing the thing, I wonder if it is suitable, although probably it has to be done this way, and especially in manuscript cataloging, we usually go that way. We look at the manuscript, we look at the item and try to identify what exactly is in there and get from there up the whole way to the work idea. The only problem is that we only have the manifestation singleton, so we have manifestation and item in one, and have to try to identify the work behind it. And therefore we have our memes that we use. We have our incipits of text and explicates, so the text beginnings and endings, in order to get an idea what the text might be about. But it does not mean that in between there might be other textual parts interwoven somehow that probably is broken into pieces, and then the other pieces of text inside. Well, yeah, I don't know if it's a real answer to your question, but I would wonder whether we could extract or organize this hierarchy if we would take all the information that we have in our local catalogs and be able to restructure it. So far, all attempts to implement RDA in the proper way that gets us the possibility to have entries that group the things together and relate the things from work to items and so on, have been like neglected and said like, oh, no, too much work. Probably with LLMs or whatever, it might be possible one day, but well, I don't know.
Are there any more questions? I think we're running a little short on time, so I would say we finish it here. And if you want to continue the discussion with us, we're going out to dinner at Cafe Botanic, so you're very welcome to join us if you wish. And thank you very much to our speaker for a wonderful presentation.